Hello and welcome to Around the Clock. I'm your host, Yolanda Greaves. On today's show, I'll be speaking with Jen Ball, Ashland's newest assistant town manager and one of our newest employees. We'll also be visiting Stone Park and Kids Spot for Green Up Ashland Day. Then we'll be going into Boston with Todd Carter as he does an interview and gets to show us Swan Lake from Boston Ballet. We'll have our Around the Town tour where we'll visit Grinsell Park and Ashland High School. We'll have our Selectmen's update and a small sports update. So stay with us here at Around the Clock. Hello and welcome to Around the Clock. I'm your host, Yolanda Greaves, and today with me I have Jen Ball, the new assistant town manager. Jen, welcome to Around the Clock.
Thank you for having me.
And welcome to Ashland.
Thank you.
Assistant town manager. So tell us a little bit about what that role is.
So really I'm learning the role. We're sort of cultivating it with Michael Herbert, the town manager. He previously held that position and he's sort of reorganized the administration a little bit. So we're working to sort of see how I can best support him and the town.
Okay, so how did you wind up as the assistant town manager of Ashland? Tell us a little bit your pathway to here.
Sure. So I had a little bit of an unorthodox pathway here. About 8 or 9 years ago, maybe even 10 or 11, I worked in the city of Lowell in local government, and it was really sort of start to open my eyes to the importance of local government in the roles of everyday lives. And I really, at the time I was working at the police department and really learning about program development and how you can work with a community to help solve problems. And I really loved that. I had an opportunity to go to the state and work at the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security and work on some policy work, which sort of was a much broader responsibility in terms of Homeland Security policy for the state. Again, working very closely with municipalities on how they can build capabilities. I've always sort of really liked the idea of building up the local capacity to be responsive not only just to the community but also sort of building capabilities. And so as I grew in that position, I really yearned to go back to the local government where I can work closely with people and really have an impact on day-to-day lives. So I started to sort of look around at communities. This position came open, I applied. And went through an interview process and was lucky enough to be chosen. Now,
before Ashland, you were in Framingham.
I was at MEMA.
Oh, so you were at MEMA in Framingham. Okay, okay. And what was your educational background? Because I find it interesting to find how did their education possibly get them or assist them in making these decisions for their work?
Sure. So undergraduate, I was a psychology major. At the time, I thought perhaps I would do counseling and or maybe working with young people. I did a little bit of work with young folks. I worked at camps. I also worked in a DYS facility, so with juveniles who have been adjudicated. I got my master's in criminal justice, again, sort of trying to think about how I could work with young people, mostly in the community. I was striving to be a juvenile probation officer. Unfortunately, that didn't come to fruition, but I sort of fell into a position where I was able to do some research on school-based policing at Northeastern at the Center of Criminal Justice Policy Research. And again, realizing that local officers have an awful lot of impact, not just on sort of crime, but also how young people see police officers, but then also some of their opportunities they have in school. And then I was able to sort of move that into working at a local level at the police department and sort of open my eyes to a whole host of things that are happening in local government.
Okay, so you've been in your position about 3 weeks?
2.5 weeks.
2.5 weeks?
Yeah.
And you've sort of been initiated by fire?
I have.
At least 1 or 2 selectmen meetings under your belt,
yes.
And then town meeting. So thoughts on the town meeting process?
I thought last night's town meeting was fantastic. I was really impressed with the amount of people in this community that are really engaged, had really interesting, thoughtful comments. I thought that we moved through the process pretty well last night, so I was really pleased.
You might get a debate depending on who you're talking to about that, but
yes, that's probably true.
So you've been in 2.5 weeks. Thoughts on where you think you can take the position as you work with Mike to develop it?
So some of the things we've talked about doing is, again, my background has a little bit of data analysis, so sort of thinking about doing a little bit of performance management perhaps, expanding that program a bit. I think the other piece is sort of working with the Health and Human Services that we currently have, and seeing how we can potentially enhance that or promote that a little bit more. I think I'll be working, I hope, with the community and just sort of see what type of initiatives, issues, and those things that we can sort of address.
Okay. Well, I want to welcome you again to Ashland. I think it's going to be great having you work with Michael. Now, one of the things Michael did tell us when he hired you was that you're a detail-oriented person. So we're hoping that you can help him with some of those details.
I'm working on that. I am. I'm working on that.
I think Mike it sounds like he has found someone to sort of complement him. And I look forward to hearing more as you guys create these two positions and how they work together.
Great. Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
So before I let you go, and I think this will be an easy one because you are new to town and you haven't spent much time, one of the questions I always ask first-time guests is there something about you, Jen Ball, that might be interesting but not too many people know that you'd be willing to share with our viewers?
Sure. So I don't know if this is particularly interesting, but maybe slightly unusual for my cohort.
Okay.
So I met my husband in high school, and so I don't know that there's too many people in my age generation that stayed with their high school sweetheart. So we've been married for 12 years, but we've been together for over 20.
Wow. Well, congratulations. That's great. Good for you guys. Yeah. So even though it's only been 12 years of marriage, that 20 years of being together and going through a lot of changes, I mean, from high school to college.
Right, yeah.
And so he obviously was in the same town as you. And
he was, and we went to separate colleges.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, stay with us and we'll be back with more Around the Clock. Welcome back to Around the Clock. It's time for our Selectmen's Update. We're going back in time a little bit. This was from the April 20th Selectmen meeting, and it was a fairly quick meeting, a number of items. We talked about a paving and sidewalk update from David Manugian as we head into the spring and summer project time as to what streets. Elliott Street will be seeing some improvements as well as other streets in downtown. We discussed the commercial vehicle bylaw as to where commercial vehicles can park, and that'll be something on town meeting warrant. We talked about the downtown and some of the projects that are going on down there regarding the signs and some of the improvements being made over around the library. And we also discussed the donation bin bylaw, another article that will be happening at town meeting. The donation bin bylaw is going to apply to the donation bins that you see in different people's properties where you can leave items to be donated. And you'll hear more about that with our town meeting update. We appointed a new auxiliary police officer, so welcome to Peter Slamman, who is now one of our new auxiliary officers. We accepted a gift from the Ashland Cultural Council, thank you to them. We did a declaration of surplus of a vehicle, and we also approved the firefighters' MDA boot drive that happens in September. Under our old and new business, we had a discussion about a decisions at every turn steering committee and who from the Board of Selectmen is going to be on that. We're actually did not make a decision that night, but we will at our next meeting. We discussed some responses to some open meeting law complaints that happened for 2 different projects, and those are still being discussed as well. We did vote to post the town meeting warrant and the town election warrant. So again, this was all at the end of April, and we've had our first night of town meeting, so that was all done. We had a horse and deer crossing request that is being looked at, so that'll be updated soon. We reviewed and updated a list of street names up off of High Street and High Street Extension for some new houses that are going on the Hillside Estates. We did a proclamation for Women's Lung Health Week, And we approved our BAA grants. So thank you to all who ran and helped raise money for the grants, and congratulations to all those who received some of our grants. And then we had a couple of updates from the town manager regarding the rail trail district and the Upper Charles Rail Trail. A lot of rail things being discussed. All in all, it was a good meeting. The big thing was we were getting ready for town meeting, which then happened on the first night was on Wednesday, May 4th. Well, that's it for this Selectmen's update. Stay with Around the Clock for more news. Welcome back to Around the Clock. It's time for our Around the Town tour. We start at Grinsell Park and Little League opening day. There was a parade that happened from Stone Park that wound through the streets and wound up at Grinsell Park, which is over by the bridge on High Street. There were some great ceremonies to kick off the season for our Little Leaguers. It's great to see the young boys and the young girls out there getting ready to play, and the parents that support them by being parents and coaches and referees. Fortunately, it was a nice day, the sun was out, and everyone looked like they were enjoying themselves.
Welcome to the opening day parade. I appreciate everybody coming out. It's a beautiful day. It's nice to see so many people here. Team, we have Ethan Antonik, Devin Ewells, Maddie Gillis, Jeffrey Holloway, Luke Herder, Dante DeVonzo, Jake Troutman, Matt Neal, Abby Hornan, Thomas Apke, and Mason Dubanowitz, and their coaches Jeff Troutman, Larry Gillis, Sean Neal, and Joe Herder. Big hand. Mason did a Boy Scout service project in the fall where he got a group of people to come down. They painted all of our bleachers. We painted our scoreboard signs. Placards to keep score. The kids would have a blast going out there keeping score. We fixed up the front with a nice little sign. It was just a great project, and we really appreciate all the hard work that Mason did. So thank you everybody for Mason.
The next stop on our Around the Town tour is the first night of Ashland Town Meeting. We've split it up into two different nights because of the ballot questions that are going on the May 17th election. There were 365 people that turned out for a town meeting, which is a good amount. We would love to have more, considering we have almost 10,000 registered voters. We got through 17 of the 21 articles, with Article 6, I believe it is, the budget article, being postponed until the second night of town meeting, which will be May 25th. There was a lot of good discussion and a lot of good questions asked. And the majority, I believe all of the articles did pass. So some of the big ones that happened was the creation of the $500,000 Community and Economic Development Stabilization Fund, the purchase of the Girl Scout property, which is up off of Olive Street, for the potential long term of using part of it as the percolating area for a wastewater treatment plant. And the biggest discussion there was how we purchased it. And we purchased it using a sewage enterprise fund. And then there was another great discussion about the new water bylaws. Make sure you check them on the town website once they're up, because there are some major changes.
Made and seconded, please raise your yellow cards, orange cards. Thank you. Those opposed? I declare two-thirds on that. It passes.
So at town meeting, we did get through Article 18, so there's about 4 or 5 articles left. And that will be happening on Wednesday, May 25th at 7 o'clock back at the Ashland High School. So if you made it the first night, we want you to make it the second night. And if you didn't make it the first night, please try and make it the second night, because that's when the budget will be discussed. And it's almost a $60 million budget, and we want more than 365 people discussing it. We hope to see you there. We'll be heading out to Stone Park and Kids Spot for Green Up Ashland Day. This is related to Earth Day. It happens the first Saturday in May. This is the 5th year that it's happening. And what happens is a number of volunteers recruit all kinds of people in the community to go around and clean up trash and beautify different areas that are in town. It can be from the street that you live on, to the MBTA road, to the playgrounds and fields around town. So let's go out to Kids Spot and Stone Park. It is a chilly Saturday morning, but it's the first Saturday in May, so we are at the Stone Park Pavilion for Green Up Ashland Day. We are here with Judith Sallet and Jean Walker. Ladies, thank you for being with me this morning.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure to be out here and part of this.
So tell us, what is Green Up Ashland Day?
Green Up Ashland Day is Ashland's answer to, in one respect, to, what's the word? I just lost it. Earth Day. Thank you. I planted 2 trees that are still growing the first Earth Day. So
and
I'm excited.
When was that? When was the first Earth Day?
Okay. Way back in the 70s, no?
I
can't remember.
I remember hearing about it in the 80s when I was probably in college.
Yeah. And at any rate, this is our way of cleaning up, helping to get Ashland clean and green, and taking debris that would be detrimental to the environment and pulling it together and getting rid of it.
Okay.
But getting rid of, and also the other thing is, it is a very community oriented thing, and people get out there together. People who know each other, people who don't know each other, are all out there doing something for the community and for our environment.
Judith, Jean, about how many volunteers do you get?
Well, different years differently. And this year, because of the weather being cold and rainy, we don't have as many that oftentimes just show up. But we always get some high school students that come. This is a good opportunity for community service for them. And then we also have adults that help us at satellite locations. This year we have 3 satellite locations, one across from Sunnyside, one at the Encompass Gym, and one at Focus of Fitness. And Focus of Fitness, this is the first year we've had it there, and the bags, they have to keep being replenished there. So that's a place that we'll go to next year as well. So we do have, I bet we have at least 150 people on a normal year, that between picking up and helping out, registering people and things like that. So it's a good number of people.
Well, as a resident of Ashland, I want to thank you. I think this is a great thing that you ladies lead and do. Other years, last year I was able to participate. I hope to be back again next year to actually be working and not just on camera. So
it's nice to have somebody that knows the town be at one of our satellite locations, as you were last year. We appreciate that. Yeah.
Good. Well, thanks for speaking with me. Hopefully it'll warm up a little before the end of the day, and good luck, and we'll hopefully see you again next year. It's time for the Around the Clock Arts Update. Todd Carter, one of our videographers and now on-air talent, was able to go in and see Boston Ballet's Swan Lake. Boston Ballet is kicking off their spring season with Mikko Nisensen's Swan Lake. It's a more than 100-year-old timeless classic choreographed by the artistic director Mikko Nisensen. This production runs through May 26th at the Boston Opera House. Todd had the opportunity to interview Ashley Ellis, one of the principal dancers of Boston Ballet.
I'm here with Ashley Ellis, and she's in Swan Lake. Can I ask you a bit about the story?
Well, Swan Lake is based around Prince Siegfried, who is, it starts out, he's having a coming-of-age party, and his mother tells him that it's time to find a wife and find a woman, and he is given a crossbow as a gift during this party. So he goes out hunting, and he encounters a swan who is under a spell. She's actually a woman. And he falls in love with her. And they both fall in love, but because she's under this spell, it's complicated. So they dance together a little bit, and then they part. And later in the third act, there's another party, and people come from all over, and there are princesses that are presented to him, but because his heart is with Odette, which is the white swan that he's fallen in love with, he only is thinking of her, and so everybody else he just doesn't even really pay much attention to. And Rothbart is who has cast this spell on Odette, the white swan, and he comes to the party, and he brings Odile, which is the famous black swan. And so he brings her to try to kind of lure and trick Prince Siegfried into falling in love with her instead of with Odette. So they have this pas de deux together, and he gets tricked, and he swears his love for Odile. So, and by swearing his love, it's supposed to break the spell that was put on Odette. So that was the whole idea with tricking him. It's a long story, but yeah. So then he realizes what he did. He swore his love for the wrong woman, and Rothbart shows him what he did, and he's heartbroken and runs back to try to find Odette. And then the fourth act happens.
Can I ask you a little bit about your role?
Yeah, I dance the role of Odette Odile. So it's one ballerina that dances two different roles. So they're not the same person, but it's one of the things that it makes the role very exciting, because you get to play this evil black swan and then this very pure white swan, Odette.
Well, that makes it a wrap for this episode of Around the Clock. A very special thank you to Jen Ball, Ashland's new Assistant Town Manager. A very special thank you to the committee members of Green Up Ashland for, one, speaking with me, but also for the great work that you do cleaning up Ashland as we head into the spring and summer. Another thank you to Todd Carter, who went in and interviewed Ashley Ellis from the Boston Ballet. If you get the opportunity, if not to see their Swan Lake, hopefully you'll get to see their next show, which will be Mirrors, a contemporary ballet. I also just want to say thank you for watching Around the Clock. If you ever have any ideas for stories or would love to reach out to me, you can do it via WACA-TV. That's it. I'm your host, Yolanda Greaves, and that's a wrap for this segment and this show of Around the Clock.